When giants fall silent. Commander Elena Cross pressed her palm against the cool metal of the observation deck's U-port, watching the stars streak past as the UHS Endeavour dropped out of hyperspace. 3 months had passed since the first colony went dark, and now 17 human settlements across 4 systems had fallen silent. Not destroyed, not conquered, just silent. The bridge hummed with quiet efficiency as her crew ran final approach diagnostics. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, her communications officer, looked up from his console with that same frustrated expression he'd worn for weeks. "Still nothing from Kepler 442c, Commander," he reported. "Colony New Brisbane should have over 40,000 residents, but we're not picking up so much as a personal comm signal." Elena nodded grimly. She'd seen this pattern before. Colonies going silent one by one, their sophisticated communication arrays simply stopping. No distress calls, no final messages, no signs of struggle. The settlements remained physically intact according to long-range scans, but every electronic system had ceased functioning. "Take us into standard orbit," she ordered. "Launch probe sequences Alpha through Delta. I want full spectrum analysis of everything down there." The Endeavour was one of humanity's newest research vessels, packed with sensors that could detect a handheld communicator from 3 light-years away. If there was any electronic signature on the planet below, they would find it. Dr. Sarah Chen, the ship's xenobiologist, approached Elena with a datapad clutched in her hands. "Commander, I've been reviewing the pattern of colony blackouts. There's something unusual about the timing." Elena accepted the datapad and studied the timeline Chen had constructed. Each colony had gone dark exactly 72 hours after reporting strange atmospheric disturbances, electromagnetic pulses that seemed to originate from uninhabited regions of their planets. "Look at this," Chen continued, pointing to seismic data. "Each world shows signs of extensive underground construction in the months leading up to the blackouts. Construction that matches no human building techniques. You're suggesting these worlds weren't uninhabited after all. I'm suggesting we've been sharing them with someone who didn't want to be found," Chen said quietly. "Until now." The first probe reached the surface of New Brisbane and immediately confirmed their worst fears. The colony's fusion reactors were cold, its defensive arrays offline, its communication towers standing silent like tombstones. But the buildings remained intact, and thermal scans showed thousands of human life signs clustered in what appeared to be makeshift shelters. "They're alive," Webb breathed. "But why aren't they using any technology?" Their answer came in the form of a single transmission, broadcast on an old emergency frequency that most modern equipment barely recognized. The voice was human, male, speaking in barely controlled panic. "This is Administrator Walsh of New Brisbane Colony. If anyone receives this message, do not use electronic devices in atmosphere. Repeat, do not use electronic devices. They turn our machines against us. They've been watching us, learning from us, and now they're using our own technology to trap us. The aliens, they call themselves the HFY. They can control any electronic system. Stay away from the colonies. Tell Earth that our greatest strength has become our greatest weakness." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Admiral Harrison's response to Elena's report was predictably dismissive. Via quantum entanglement communicator, his gruff voice carried the casual arrogance that had defined human military doctrine for decades. "Commander Cross, you're telling me that some primitive aliens have figured out how to jam our communications. We've dealt with electromagnetic warfare before. I'm dispatching Phoenix Squadron to clean up this mess." Phoenix Squadron represented the pinnacle of human military technology. 12 elite soldiers equipped with power armor that could deflect plasma bolts, neural implants that enhanced their reflexes to superhuman levels, and weapons that could level city blocks. They had never failed a mission. Elena watched their sleek dropships descend toward the planet's surface, each one bristling with sensors and automated defense systems. Captain Rex Morrison, Phoenix Squadron's leader, maintained constant communication as his team approached their target, the source of the electromagnetic pulses that had preceded each colony's blackout. Visual contact with alien structures, Morrison reported. Looks like some kind of crystalline formations growing out of the rock. Very primitive construction. Beginning tactical assessment. Alina felt a chill run down her spine. In her experience, anything that looked primitive usually wasn't. The first sign of trouble came when Morrison's power armor began reporting system conflicts. Getting some interference with my targeting systems, he noted casually. Probably just atmospheric distortion. Then Private Jackson's weapon began firing on its own, spraying plasma bolts in random directions. Control, my rifle's malfunctioned. It won't respond to neural commands. Within minutes, Phoenix Squadron's advanced equipment had turned against them. Power armor locked its occupants inside while draining life support. Neural implants fed false sensory data to their users. Weapons targeted their own squad mates with deadly precision. Alina watched in horror as elite soldiers who had conquered a dozen worlds were methodically destroyed by their own technology. Captain Morrison's final transmission was barely audible through the static. They're not primitive, Command. They're brilliant. They've been studying our tech for months, learning every frequency, every protocol. They don't need weapons when they can turn ours against us. Tell Earth. Tell them we never stood a chance. Only Alina's insistence on maintaining old-fashioned radio silence had kept the Endeavor from suffering the same fate. As Phoenix Squadron fell silent, she ordered her ship to withdraw to minimum safe distance. That's when the Kethvar made their presence truly known. The alien broadcast came through every human communication channel simultaneously. Military networks, civilian frequencies, even the quantum entanglement arrays connecting distant colonies. The voice was artificial, clearly translated through human technology that had been captured and repurposed. People of Terra, the voice began, using humanity's ancient name for Earth. We are the Kethvar. For many cycles, we have observed your expansion into what you call empty space. You build your settlements on worlds we have inhabited for millennia, never realizing we were there. The broadcast continued as Alina's crew listened in stunned silence. Your species fascinates us. You create tools of incredible complexity, yet you become helpless when those tools fail. You have forgotten the simple arts of survival your ancestors knew. We do not wish to destroy you, but we cannot allow you to unknowingly destroy us. Your colonies will remain safe as long as you do not attempt to use electronic devices in our presence. We have learned to speak through your machines, but we prefer the silence. Consider this a lesson in humility, children of Terra. Your technology is impressive, but it has made you weak. The transmission ended, leaving humanity to grapple with a terrifying new reality. Their greatest advantage, their technological superiority, had become a liability against an enemy that could turn their own weapons against them. Alina stared at the silent planet below, her mind racing. 17 colonies had fallen not through conquest, but through a complete negation of human military doctrine. The Kethvar had won without firing a shot, simply by proving that humanity had become too dependent on the very technology that had carried them to the stars. In her private quarters that night, Alina opened an old military manual her grandfather had given her, one that covered pre-digital warfare tactics from humanity's ancient conflicts. If they were going to fight the Kethvar, they would need to remember how to fight like their ancestors, with simple tools, quick thinking, and the raw determination that had carried humanity from caves to starships. The war for humanity's future would be fought not with plasma cannons and neural networks, but with the oldest weapons of all, human ingenuity and the will to survive. Learning to fight in the dark. 3 weeks after Phoenix Squadron's annihilation, Earth's military leadership had fractured into chaos. Admiral Harrison had been relieved of command after ordering 2 more high-tech assaults that ended in similar disasters. The Kethvar had proven remarkably consistent. Any human force that relied on electronic equipment was systematically destroyed by their own gear. Alina stood before the Emergency Defense Council in a bunker buried beneath Geneva, one of the few facilities still using purely mechanical systems. The room was lit by chemical lights, and all communication occurred through physical messengers or analog radio systems that the Kethvar seemed unable to manipulate. "The situation is simple," Alina began, addressing the dozen military leaders seated around a wooden table that looked absurdly primitive in the underground complex. "We cannot win this war using conventional tactics. Every time we deploy advanced weapons, the Kethvar turn them against us." General Patricia Reeves, newly appointed head of Earth Defense, leaned forward. "What are you proposing, Commander?" "That we abandon 2 centuries of military advancement. I'm proposing we remember what made humanity dangerous before we had plasma rifles and neural implants," Alina replied. "I've been studying historical conflicts, particularly asymmetric warfare. The Kethvar may be able to control our technology, but they can't control human creativity." Alina activated a manual projector, displaying images of chemical explosive devices, spring-loaded mechanical traps, and simple ballistic weapons. "These are the tools our ancestors used to conquer a planet. No electronics, no computer targeting systems, no digital communications, just human intelligence applied to the problem of warfare." General Reeves frowned. "You want to fight an interstellar conflict with gunpowder and clockwork. I want to fight with weapons they can't subvert," Alina said firmly. "The Kethvar have spent months learning our electronic systems, but they've never encountered a mechanical crossbow or a chemical explosive with a simple timer mechanism." The plan Alina proposed was radical. Create Ghost Company, a special operations unit trained exclusively in pre-digital warfare. Soldiers would use spring-loaded weapons, mechanical timepieces, and chemical communication systems. They would navigate by stars and compass, communicate through coded light signals, and fight with tools that had remained unchanged for centuries. The recruitment process proved challenging. Most modern soldiers had trained exclusively with smart weapons and augmented reality targeting systems. Alina needed people who could think without computer assistance, who could improvise with limited resources, and who weren't psychologically dependent on electronic equipment. She found them in unexpected places. Marcus Torres had been a demolitions expert before joining the military, with experience in old-fashioned mining explosives. Sarah Kim was a competitive archer who had never used electronic sights. David Sullivan had grown up on a farming world where mechanical equipment was still common due to frequent solar storms. Training began in facilities deliberately stripped of all electronic devices. Ghost Company learned to read maps by hand, to calculate ballistic trajectories using simple mathematics, and to coordinate attacks through visual signals and prearranged timing. Dr. Chen contributed crucial intelligence about Kethvar biology, gleaned from long-range observations. The aliens were silicon-based life forms that interfaced naturally with electronic systems, but had significant vulnerabilities to certain chemical compounds. More importantly, they seemed to have no experience with purely mechanical threats. Alina's opportunity came when the Kethvar began expanding their influence beyond the original colonies. Long-range scouts reported alien construction on Ta City Prime, humanity's most important industrial world. If that planet fell, the loss of manufacturing capacity would cripple humanity's ability to mount any resistance. Operation Silent Storm launched under cover of a massive electromagnetic storm that masked Ghost Company's approach. 12 soldiers descended to Ta City Prime in unpowered gliders, carrying weapons that hadn't been used in warfare for over a century. The Kethvar had clearly expected another high-tech assault. Their defensive preparations focused on electromagnetic warfare systems designed to subvert human electronics. They were completely unprepared for soldiers who approached on foot, navigated by starlight, and carried weapons powered by springs and chemical reactions. Marcus Torres's expertise proved invaluable as Ghost Company planted chemical explosives throughout the Kethvar's crystalline structures. The aliens' own electromagnetic abilities, so devastating against human technology, proved useless against devices triggered by simple chemical timers. Sarah Kim's archery skills, allowed her to deliver explosive charges to precise locations without triggering the electromagnetic sensors the Kethvar used to detect human weapons. Her arrows, carved from local wood and tipped with chemical explosives, simply didn't register as threats to alien detection systems designed to recognize metal projectiles and energy weapons. The battle that followed was unlike anything in modern military history. Kethvar warriors, accustomed to turning human weapons against their users, found themselves facing enemies whose crossbow bolts and chemical grenades couldn't be subverted. Their attempts to interface with Ghost Company's equipment failed completely. There were no electronic systems to hack, no digital networks to infiltrate. Elena watched the engagement from orbit through purely optical telescopes as explosions bloomed across the alien installations. Each blast was precisely timed and positioned to maximize structural damage, while avoiding the human industrial facilities the Kethvar had been attempting to capture. The aliens' response was swift but limited. Without the ability to turn human technology against itself, the Kethvar were forced to rely on their own weapons for the first time in months. Their energy-based attacks were formidable, but they lacked the tactical flexibility they'd shown when using captured human equipment. David Sullivan's agricultural background proved crucial during the ground campaign. His understanding of chemical reactions allowed Ghost Company to create improvised weapons from materials found on the industrial world. Fertilizers became explosives, industrial solvents became incendiary devices, and simple metal pipes became launchers for chemical projectiles. The turning point came when Ghost Company managed to capture a Kethvar communication node, not by hacking its systems, but by physically severing its connections and surrounding it with chemical jammers that disrupted the silicon-based aliens' natural electromagnetic abilities. For the first time since the conflict began, humans had successfully taken Kethvar prisoners. The interrogation that followed revealed the true scope of the alien strategy. The Kethvar were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were gardeners, attempting to prune what they saw as humanity's dangerous technological growth. They had genuinely believed that disabling human electronics would force a return to more sustainable development patterns. Elena realized that both species had been fighting the wrong war. The Kethvar feared human technology, not because it threatened them militarily, but because it threatened the delicate electromagnetic ecosystems they had cultivated over millennia. Humanity's expansion had been inadvertently disrupting alien civilizations that existed in the spaces between traditional matter. The resolution of the conflict came not through military victory, but through a negotiated understanding facilitated by Ghost Company's success. Having proven that humans could fight effectively without advanced technology, Elena was able to approach the Kethvar from a position of strength rather than dependence. The peace treaty established electromagnetic-free zones around Kethvar settlements, while the aliens agreed to cease their interference with human colonies that maintained proper technological boundaries. More importantly, both species began collaborative research into sustainable development methods that could support both carbon-based and silicon-based life forms. Ghost Company's success had profound implications for human military doctrine. While advanced technology remained important, every military unit now included soldiers trained in non-electronic warfare. The lesson was clear. Tools could be turned against their users, but human adaptability and ingenuity were weapons that could never be compromised. Elena reflected on the conflict as she watched joint human Kethvar research teams working on Ta City Prime. Humanity had been forced to remember its roots, to reconnect with the simple but effective tools that had carried the species from prehistoric caves to interstellar civilization. The war had been won not by superior firepower, but by the most human trait of all: the ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome any obstacle through sheer determination and creative thinking. The galaxy was vast enough for both species, and now they would explore it together, each bringing their own strengths to the challenges that lay ahead among the stars.